Now we get into John Herrmann. John Herrmann did not go into the tailoring business, but he had a career as a writer. And I've told you all about the business stuff, but that whole family was so into boats. If they didn't have a boat, they'd find a boat. Dorothy, the daughter, bought a boat, and they kept it in Macatawa. Then the boys would take her, and they'd go on a picnic for the day. And my grandmother bought a cottage on Walloon Lake, a great big old cottage. Didn't have electricity or anything, and but it had a little bunky room, like another thing built onto it, with lots of beds, so all the kids could come. And then they would write each other these letters, which I do have some of, about Ursula Hemingway and how they took her out at the boat and how she was the princess. And there was this whole thing going on in St. Joe with some kind of like this man had come, and it was sort of like his own religion. And I can't remember what they called him. But anyway, they pretend they were him, and that they had their kingdom out there on Walloon Lake. And a lot of that they'd write down and tell each other about. And then my grandparents wanted easier lifestyle than the rough place. And so they bought a cottage in Bayview. But the main thing was the Hemingway connection, which I think kind of encouraged John to be, more involved in different things with his writing. Oh my gosh, these are adventures. There was lots of talk of sailing and fishing and Hemingway and Herman suits, because my grandfather had the tailoring business in Lansing. His boys were very well clothed. John's suit story begins when John would pass on to Ernest Hemingway his slightly used suits when his father had sent him a new one. In a letter, he thanks him, or a letter of thanks, Hem writes, "The suit is fine and it fits perfectly, except for the length of the trousers that a tailor could fix in an hour. It is damned handsome suit, thanks." And in another he writes, "It's damn fine to know that your father and brothers will clothe us all from now on. I won't need another one now until fall. Break in something natty in a Clark blue for October wear. Best to you always, Hem." When John's dad had sent him a $1,000 check, only to find out that John was living with Josephine Herbst out of wedlock, he wrote that the check had been canceled due to John's living circumstances. Yet he added a P.S. that he had sent him a new summer suit. So, I don't know, they had the family kind of straight-laced thinking, and then they had these boys that were all kind of wild and going off in different ways. And my dad wrote that while he loved the trout in Torch Lake, they could catch bullheads a block from where they lived on North Washington Avenue. He writes, "They were ugly, with horns sticking out and sharp points. My older brother John would gut them and pull the black skin off, and then roll them in flour and salt them and fry them in lard to a crisp brown. And boy, they were dandy." So anyway, they go on, they talk a lot about the girls from Oak Park, the Hemingway girls, going to the cabaret in Harbor Springs, the Jewelette's that used to be kind of a dance hall, Raleigh Stebbins, Roaring Brook. It said during the Depression, the boys bought a 30-foot yawl from one of their sister's friends, which sailed to Wisconsin, to Holland, Michigan. They kept it there on weekends. My dad writes, They would go to Affelt's grocery store in North Lansing, get liquor and groceries, charge them to their dad's account, and then go to Holland and sail all weekend. The love of sailing is what drove John's enlistment in the Coast Guard and his sailing all over the country, as well as in Key West with Ernest Hemingway. Yeah, so John went to Paris and kind of got in with Josephine Herbst, whom he married, who was a very liberal thinking woman, writer. And Gertrude Stein was one of her very good friends. And so John hung out with that crowd, and they helped him. They'd read his books, they'd read things he'd written and give him ideas. And Hemingway, I remember once in a letter, John had written to Hemingway and said he needed money so badly. And Hemingway said, I don't have any money, but I'll send you a story and you can sell it. So they did like short stories that they would kind of pass around. Or I know that he wanted to help farmers and he wanted to help people. And so he got, kind of involved with politics that way. But I guess the most crushing thing would be when he brought the book, was it What Happens? He had it published in Paris, and then when he went to bring it back to the United States, they blocked it and said it was salacious and against the rules of moral conduct or whatever, because I haven't read much about that. But so if you've read the book, it's just sort of about a coming of age of a young man, nothing that we would blink an eye at. But I almost wonder if somebody was trying to get at him for, something that, but I know his parents were very upset. And there was a letter where the mother had written that the Hemingway, she was friends with Mrs. Hemingway, and everybody was talking about him and how he was bad and all that. And so that was probably hard for him too.